Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The Shiur is Leiluy Nishmat, Daniella, Shaina, Aleha Hashalom. Bas Yehoshua Falik Sheyichye, her neshama should have an aliyah, an Allah Yidin Ayashia. As we approach, actually as we get close to the Yom Tov of Chanukah, Hashem should bless all of us and all of Klal Yisrael with a Yom Tov filled with light and warmth. And it should be good for the Jews, and they should be safe, and all human beings should be safe all over the world. We are actually concluding this evening a 6-week course, which I called Torah Has Body and Soul. I wanted with this course to choose different examples of the stories of the Torah. We ended up focusing primarily on different stories that take place in Chumash Bereshis, but I didn't necessarily intend it to be specifically stories in Chumash Bereshis, just general ideas in Torah, where you have certain things which can be viewed in almost polar opposite ways, where the Torah itself wants us to understand different aspects, different prayers. We spoke about Moed Ani, how it's meant to be understood on a literal level, on an esoteric level. We spoke about the daughters of Lot, how their story can be understood in polar opposite ways. It can be understood as a sin, it can be understood as a mitzvah. And we started last week talking about a Rashi based on a medrash at the beginning of Parshas Toldos about Avram and Yitzchak, and I wanted to finish the thought with Hashem's help this week. So again, the issue that we were discussing last week is that at the beginning of Parshas Toldos, Rashi says that there were cynics in the generation of Avram Avinu, and the cynics were making the case that Yitzchak was not really Avram's son. The cynics said, come on, what are the chances? Avram and Sarah have been married for so many years and nothing ever happened. And then one day Sarah's taken captive, and sure enough, a short while after that, a baby boy is born. The cynics, the cynical people, the ones who don't necessarily do much, but they have a lot to say about everybody else who does. The cynics sat there and said, nah, we don't believe it. Yeah, right, a miracle. Avram Avinu had a baby at the age of 99. Wasn't such a miracle. Sarah was taken captive, and boom, she got pregnant, mazel tov. The cynics of the generation, says Rashi, leitzonei hadoir, those who make fun, they weren't convinced about this whole business, about this miracle that Hashem made for Avram and Sarah. They weren't impressed. Ma'asa Kodesh Baruch Hu, says Rashi. What did Hashem do? He made Yitzchak look exactly like Avram Avinu. And everybody who saw this gave testimony, and they said, Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak. One of the questions we mentioned last week was, why is this considered such a miracle? A miracle that Yitzchak looked like Avram? After all, the truth is they were father and son. The truth is Avram was Yitzchak's father, Yitzchak was Avram's son. It should have been a very natural thing that Yitzchak looked like Avram Avinu. All right, not exactly the same, but still, how often do you hear people say, he looks just like his father? No, why is that so surprising? Why is this considered some fantastic miracle? So we were talking last week that Avraham and Yitzchak, our ancestors, the first two fathers of the Jewish people, by nature, in terms of their temperament, in terms of their personality, and even in terms of their way of serving Hashem, they were complete polar opposites. In the language of Kabbalah, they say Avraham is chesed and Yitzchak is gevura. Avraham is kindness, Yitzchak is discipline and severity. Avraham was outgoing. Avraham was perhaps what we'd call an extrovert, right? Extroverts, they get energy from hanging out with other people. They get energy from spending time with people. If they have to spend time alone, being alone drains their energy. Yitzchak is seen as an introvert. Yitzchak is seen as a person who, with the Torah, doesn't tell us much about his interaction with other people. We don't read about it much. The Torah tells us that he dug wells. That the Torah does say. But in terms of his interaction, his influence on others, we don't find that. Avraham was in pain. If people didn't come to see him, Avraham was suffering. Yitzchak doesn't say that at all. And more importantly, their methodology of serving Hashem was different. Their ways were different. Avraham was out there influencing others, teaching the world to believe in Hashem. Yitzchak did nothing of the sort. And so these cynics, if you will, of the generation, they weren't just making fun. They weren't just, they weren't just looking for something to make a big deal of. The cynics touched upon something which was very difficult to understand. The cynics had a very powerful argument. The cynics argued, how can Avraham and Yitzchak, these two people who represent such different approaches and such different styles, how can these two people both be the ancestors of the Jews? What kind of a people is this going to be? Are they going to be an Avraham people? Are they going to be a Yitzchak people? Are they going to be outgoing? Are they going to interact with the world? Are they going to mix and mingle? Are they going to be charismatic? Or are they going to hide and hunker down and segregate themselves and hide in shtetlach and separate themselves from society? It seemed, at the outlook, it seemed that Avraham and Yitzchak had two very different plans for how the Jewish people, for how their children would live. Avraham wanted a more integrated society, his children to be more integrated, as he himself was. Avraham was comfortable with his descendants mixing with the nations of the world and being a positive influence on them, as he himself was. Yitzchak, it seems, was more comfortable with locking himself up in the Beis Medrash, locking himself up in shul, and staying separate from the world, as separate as possible. And so Avraham and Yitzchak, it seems, have two very different ideas of how the Jewish people will evolve, will emerge from them. And so the Leitzonei Hador, the mockers, the scoffers of the generation, says, Avraham doesn't produce a Yitzchak. Again, they were not talking biologically. They said, Yitzchak, this type of a service of Hashem, this type of a model for the Jewish nation, one doesn't come from the other. It's either Avraham's way or it's Yitzchak's way. Before I go on, I want to say, dare I say, that perhaps over Jewish history, this battle rages on even till this day. Even till this day, you have these two opinions, these two approaches among the Jews. The Avraham style and the Yitzchak style. The Avraham style that says, we got to get out there. The Avraham style that says, we got to pitch tents, and we got to serve people food, and we got to talk to them about our beliefs, and we got to influence the world, and we got to teach them. And we got to show the world what a Jew is. We have nothing to fear. And then there are descendants of Yitzchak who say we want nothing to do with the world, as little as possible. We want to segregate and we want to isolate and we want to protect ourselves and protect what we have and protect what we know, and we don't want the influence of the outside world to affect us at all. Who knows what kind of influence the world will have on us? Yitzchak wrestles and battles every time. Every experience that he has with the outside world, if you read the Psukim, it's full of strife. Avraham had his own fair share of strife. So the Yitzchak Jews are of the mindset that they say, no, let's not get involved with things that we don't know how to handle. Let's protect ourselves. In Jewish history, over the past 3,500 years, there was Avraham times and there was Yitzchak times. There were times when Jews were able to go out and mingle. There were times where Jews were able to go out and make a Kiddush Hashem, and they were very successful at it. And then there were Yitzchak times where Jews held on for dear life to their own existence and just hoped to be able to survive for the next day. Looking at one and looking at the other, one wonders, how can a Jewish people have both? How are the Jewish people going to be an Avraham people or a Yitzchak people? Concludes the Medrash. Ma oso HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What did Hashem do? Hashem made a miracle. He made Yitzchak look like Avraham Avinu. Again, on a physical level, there's nothing miraculous about that. On a spiritual level, this is a game changer. Hashem made Yitzchak look like Avraham, and the whole generation, everybody stood there with their mouths open, and they gave testimony, and they said, Avraham gave birth to Yitzchak. What does that mean? I'll tell you what it means. What it means is that Hashem showed the world that they had misunderstood Avraham and they had misunderstood Yitzchak. That they didn't understand why Avraham was the way he was, and they didn't understand why Yitzchak was the way he was. They had missed the point of both. Hashem said, Avraham is not outgoing. Avraham is not an extrovert. Yitzchak is not an introvert. You have the whole thing wrong. You have it all wrong. So what is it? What's the truth? The truth is that Avraham and Yitzchak are exactly the same. And what's the same? So if that's the case, what are they both? Both, Hashem says, Avraham and Yitzchak are my agents. Both, Hashem says, live a godly life. Both, Hashem says, will accomplish in this world exactly what it is that I, Hashem, intend for them to accomplish in this world. Both are my agents, and both do the best they can to fulfill Hashem's mission in this world. Avraham is not a man of kindness just because he wants to be a man of kindness. Avraham is not a man of kindness just because that's what he likes. Avraham is not a man of kindness just because that's his personality. Avraham is a man of kindness because he understands that that's his divine mission in this world. He's completely dedicated to fulfilling his divine mission in this world. And yes, his divine mission calls upon him to be influential. And his divine mission calls upon him to mingle with the nations of the world and to teach them about Hashem. In Avraham's case, his divine mission and mandate in this world called upon him to be wealthy. Avraham was supposed to be, and in fact, he was incredibly wealthy. And when people said to him, Avraham, you're doing well, look at you, du machst Geld, sehr schön, you're making money, very nice, we're very happy for you. Avraham said, Hashem blessed me with wealth. And this way he influenced people. He used the gifts Hashem had given him. He used the opportunities. He used the personality that Hashem had given him to do what it was that he perceived was his divine mission. And in that sense, Yitzchak was exactly the same. Yitzchak also dedicated his life to a mission and to a purpose that was beyond him. To the same Hashem that Avraham Avinu worshiped, Yitzchak worshiped the same Hashem too. What exactly did Yitzchak do in his particular worship of Hashem? Whatever it was that Hashem had demanded from him. Hashem gave Yitzchak the type of temperament and the type of personality and the type of gift that Yitzchak needed in order to fulfill what it was that he needed to accomplish in this world. But both of them Hashem showed the world. Both of them Hashem showed them. Were ready to dedicate themselves to their godly mandate. And that's what they did. And when the world saw that, that Avraham and Yitzchak were not two individuals fighting for their own identity, that Avraham and Yitzchak weren't two individuals looking to make their mark on society, looking to contribute something, looking to make a difference. They weren't looking to make a difference. They were looking to fulfill their godly mission in this world. They woke up every morning and they asked themselves, what does Hashem want me to do today? Given my temperament and given my person, how can I use the skills Hashem has given me to fulfill what it is that I need to do? And in that sense, Avraham and Yitzchak were exactly the same. And then for the first time, even the cynics were silenced. And I'll tell you why. There's only one way to silence a cynic. There's only one way to make a point, to say something that will convince even the most cynical of human beings. I'll tell you why. Why are people cynical? It's a terrible character trait. It's a terrible character. Cynicism. It's a terrible character trait. Why do people, generally speaking, why do people become cynical? You know why? Because they were disappointed. Because they've been hurt. Because somewhere in life, they discovered that people or things that they trusted, people or things that they had high hopes for, turned out to be selfish and hypocritical. And so they lost their faith. And so they became cynical. where they're no longer fooled or they're no longer impressed by people who put up a good show because they've seen one time too many that if you scratch the surface underneath the fancy show and underneath the lights and behind these smoke screens is an individual who is selfish and looking out for his own benefit just like everybody else. When a person sees that too many times, they become cynical. They start, Rashi uses the expression, leitzone hador, they start to make fun. They say, don't get so impressed. Don't get so excited. So-and-so looks holy. So-and-so looks altruistic. So-and-so looks noble. They're all the same. Sooner or later, the hypocrite will emerge. Sooner or later, the two-faced liar, the selfish person will emerge. Human nature is human nature. Nobody overcomes it. The cynics make the argument. Everybody's the same. Everybody's looking out for themselves. Even in Abraham's generation, there were cynics who looked at Abraham and said, you think Abraham is so holy? You think Abraham is so fantastic? Abraham is selfish like everybody else. Abraham's looking to make a name for himself in history. So he has these ideas. He's charismatic. He's wealthy. He's influential, etc., etc. Abraham's looking to make a splash, so he makes a splash. It has no future, the cynic said. In the end, he's just another human being. He's just another guru driving around in a fancy car, charging people $1,000 an hour for speaking fees. He's just another guy. What makes him different? The fact that he's charismatic, the fact that he's wealthy. Along comes his son Yitzchak. They said, look, Avram has a son called Yitzchak. His son is the exact opposite. What did Hashem do? Hashem showed the people of the generation that his chosen people, Hashem said, my chosen people, the Jewish people, Avraham and Yitzchak, these are not people who are looking out for themselves. These are not people who walk around and beat their chest and think of themselves as God's gift to mankind. These are people who possess the true quality of humility. They are both equally, Abraham and Yitzchak, while they have polar opposite personalities and opposite natures and work in opposite ways, they're both equally committed to the same Rabbeinu Shalom, who would call upon them to do anything, and they would do it. There is an neshama there, there's an altruism there, which even the greatest cynics of the generation, when they see it, they cannot help but be impressed, and their mouths drop, and they're silenced. You see, a cynic isn't a cynic because they want to be. A cynical, who wants to be a cynical person? Nobody. It's the reason why people are cynical, the reason why we are cynical, we're trying to protect ourselves from more pain. We don't want to be disappointed again. So, as a wise man once said, the best way to make sure you don't get this, the secret to happiness in life is low expectations. If I don't expect anything from you in the first place, then I'm not disappointed when you don't produce anything. The Leitzone Adar says, what do you want? Everybody worships idols. Everybody worships themselves. Avraham maybe found a more sophisticated idol. Yitzchak maybe found a more sophisticated idol. No, Hashem says. These people are going to be eternal. The descendants of Avraham and Yitzchak are going to have a godly quality which is going to truly distinguish them from all other human beings. They will be capable of going through fire and water, and their children will, and they will never lose their faith ever. Because as they say in Yiddish, as miszugebunden oben, when you're connected above, you don't fall down below. They're connected to something which is so much greater than them. They actually mean it. These are, Avraham and Yitzchak are the ambassadors truly of Hashem's truth in this world. And that makes them the gatekeepers of the truth, that gives them the key to good education. I want to tell you two quick stories. Number one, I once heard actually a goyish educator, who gave the example. He said, a father was once teaching his son about truth. And of course, he's lecturing his son a whole week. And you always have to tell the truth, no matter what. No matter what the situation is, even if you chop down the cherry tree, you still have to tell the truth. It was me. I chopped down the, well, no matter what it is, the truth, the truth, the truth. And so for a whole week, he lectures his son and lectures him, truth, 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 truth. At the end of the week, he says to his son, "No, you understand?" "Yeah, Baruch Hashem." "All right," he tells his son, "you did so well in your studies. It's time to give you a reward." "What's the reward?" "We're taking you to the amusement park." All right, they go to the amusement park. They come to the amusement park. There's a sign at the gate. Children under 11, half price. How old is the kid? 12. But the kid's a short kid, and he can pass for a 10-year-old. So the father bends down to the child and says, "When we get to the gate, I'm going to tell them that you're 10, so that we pay half price. This way, we'll save a couple of bucks. Do me a favor," the father says to the son. "Don't embarrass me by telling them that you're really 12, because sometimes that happens, when parents lie about their kid's age. My kid's really 10 years old. The kid goes, "No, I'm not, I'm 12. So the parent says to the kid, before they get to the gate, the parent says, "Do me a favor, don't embarrass me. I'm going to say that you're 10. Just go along with it. I'll pay half price. And you can get an extra cotton candy," whatever it is. Fine. And they get to the gate, and the parent lies about the child's age, and they get in for half price. No, so this is a goy. The goyish educator says, "No, what do you think? You probably think to yourself," he says, "that in that one moment, the father has undone his entire lesson for a full week. For a whole week, the father was telling the son, tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth. And then when it came to a couple of bucks, the father lied." So you think to yourself, when you hear the story, the father undid everything he taught his son a whole week, right? Well, that's what I thought. Says the Goyish educator, no, he didn't undo anything. He just reframed it. He just put it in a neat box. You see, the child will grow up, at least until a certain age, and believe everything the father told them. You see, basically what the parent told the child was, there is a drasha. There's a speech. There's a speech that parents have to give children, and it's called Tell the Truth. And this speech says that you have to tell the truth no matter what. And it's a very holy speech. But when you finish the speech, if you can save $3, it's okay to lie. Somehow, in the father's world, there's no contradiction between the two. And the child who is naive, the child who is young, who is trusting, believes this perverted message. That you can do both, that you can somehow compartmentalize and talk a drasha about truth and talk the talk, but still lie about it in order to save money. And somehow to the child, the child may not fully understand why there's no contradiction, but the child accepts that there's no contradiction because the child loves and trusts the parent. If that's what my father does, then that must be right, that must be true. So it's not that the father undoes the lesson. The father doesn't undo it. He just reframes it and teaches the child basically that both of these concepts somehow coexist. We talk about telling the truth, but we actually lie if it can save us $3. And until the child develops a maturity of their own, they can grow up with this contradiction, with this rift in their consciousness, and just think it's normal. Why do I say this? Those who made fun, those who scoffed, the cynics in the generation of Avraham, and believe me, they exist in every generation throughout Jewish history and beyond. There's a little cynic within every single one of us. The little cynic looks at Avraham Avinu and says, look at this. The guy is teaching the whole world about Hashem. Unbelievable. Yeah, but at some point, there's going to be an amusement park where when he gets there, he's going to lie about his child. At some point, he's going to trip up somewhere. Come on. Nobody really, really believes this 100%. Every human being has some misgiving somewhere. Everybody has some imperfection. So the cynics are just waiting for Avram to trip up and to see that so that we can and show his true colors. The cynics are waiting for he who preaches about truth to also lie, because they've seen it so many times. And Hashem turns to the cynics and says, you got it all wrong. The Jewish people, are made of different stuff. When Avraham says he believes in Hashem, he believes in Hashem. He believes in Hashem on Sunday. He believes in Hashem on Monday. He believes in Hashem in highs. He believes in Hashem in lows. He believes in Hashem when things are good. He believes in Hashem when things are difficult. He believes. And he gives that to his son Yitzchak. Yitzchak will learn to apply it in his own way. Avram is not trying to make a carbon copy of himself in his son Yitzchak. He wants to empower his son Yitzchak to be his own independent human being, but with the same message and with the same purpose of life. To serve Hashem in the way we best know how. Does that mean Avraham was perfect? Does that mean Yitzchak was perfect? Does that mean anybody is perfect? No human being is perfect. But their belief is real. And the God that they're connected to is real. And the truth that they preach and that they teach is real despite their own imperfections. And they never waver in their commitment to it. And that's the deeper meaning of Tzor Klaster Ponav Shel Yitzchak Doimel Avram, that Hashem shows the world that Yitzchak and Avram are the same. I also asked last week, why does the Torah not make this point when Yitzchak is born? Why do we wait till Yitzchak has? Why do we wait till now? And the answer is because now Yitzchak is going to have children. Yitzchak is going to have his own. Yitzchak is going to have a Yaakov and Esav, and they're going to have more children. And so we get to the point where there's going to be a continuity here, Jewish continuity. So what is the secret? What is the power? What is the magical element of Jewish continuity? It's this point that Yitzchak and Avram are the same, not in their own character, not in their own style, but in their own dedication to a God, to a Hashem who is above them. In the words of the Medrash says, Hashem has opposing angels. Hashem has angels of fire, and Hashem has angels of water. In Hashem's presence, the Medrash says, the angels don't wrestle with each other. Why don't the angels don't contradict each other? Why not? Because both feel and live that they're expressing a truth, they're living a truth, they're here to serve and bring out a truth which is beyond them both. So long as a Jew lives with that sense that I'm here to be Hashem's ambassador, to make this world a godly place, that comes through into everything they touch. That comes through into every person they come in contact with. And sooner or later, people will say, this Jew is different. This person is different. He means it. She means it. There's something about them that distinguishes them from everybody else. You know, people sometimes ask, with regard to teachers, with regard to leaders, with regard to people who are supposed to represent being Torah personalities, being spiritual personalities, people who are supposed to represent being Torah teachers, etc. People sometimes ask, how do I know when someone is for real, and how do I know when someone's fake? How do we distinguish between, when someone means it and when someone's doing it for show? How do we distinguish between the good stuff and the better stuff? I don't want to learn from a phony baloney. I want to learn from someone who's real. How do I know? How do you know? How do you know if someone's for real or someone's not? The answer is very simple. When the person teaches, when the person shares their wisdom, when the person does whatever it is that this leader, that this Rav, that this rabbi is supposed to do, the Torah that comes out the Torah that they teach, is it about the teacher or is it about the message? Is it about me, the person who is presenting, or is it about the content that's being presented? Does the person have the ability to make it all about themselves, or do they become a transparent conduit and the message flows through them? That's the difference. If it's all about the teacher, if it becomes all about the individual, the person who's carrying the message, if it becomes all about me, then there's no room for Hashem. No matter how brilliant you are, no matter how sophisticated you are, no matter how charismatic you are, the cynics of the generation will sit there long enough until they say, he's selfish and he's two-faced like everybody else. But if it's not about me, if it's about the truth of the Torah, if it's about the truth of the message, if it's about the truth of Hashem, if it's about how much we can create humility and space in ourselves and in our lives for the godly truth to come through, then the godly truth comes through. How do you tell if a person is making it about themselves or not? How do you tell? The Lubavitcher Rebbe once gave a very beautiful way to tell. He said, you know how you tell if a person is real or not? He said, the way you can tell is if a person is prepared to invest themselves to help one person, like they'd be prepared to help many people. You see, if it's about the message, if it's about the truth, if it's about my divine godly mandate in this world, then what's the difference if I'm helping one person or if I'm helping 10,000? What's the difference if I'm teaching Torah to one person or 10,000? What's the difference if I'm inspiring one person or 1,000,000 person? It's the truth of Hashem. Avraham inspired millions of people. Yitzchak inspired one. What's the difference? The Torah says nothing. Yitzchak and Avraham look the same. Why? Because it wasn't about them. But when you see a person who's very excited to teach many people, put them in front of a microphone and they come to life. But put them in front of one person and they have no patience. They have no time. They have no interest. What's the difference? Why for one person you have no patience and time and for 1,000 people you do? Because with 1,000 people you get covered. With 1,000 people you feel good about yourself. Look at me. I'm teaching 1,000 people. It's about you. If it's about you, then the scoffers and the cynics of the generation are 100% right. If it's about you, then it's temporary. Sooner or later, it'll be over. The first Rebbe of Chabad had a very wealthy chassid. And this wealthy chassid used his money to make soup kitchens. All over Russia, soup kitchens everywhere. That would feed people who didn't have money to provide food for themselves and their family. And he did it quietly. Nobody knew, everybody knew that somebody paid for it. He didn't want any publicity. He didn't want anybody to know it was him. He gave the money and they were feeding hundreds, thousands of people. One day he comes to his master and his teacher, the Rebbe. He says, Rebbe, I've decided to shut down the kitchens. All of them. I've decided to close every one of them down. What happened, says the Rebbe, you ran out of money? No, I got plenty of money. So why are you closing down the kitchens? He says, Rebbe, I'll tell you what happened. I went on a journey and I went and I visited without anybody knowing. I went and I visited every one of my soup kitchens. And I sat there with 10, 20, 30, 100 people in kitchen after kitchen after kitchen. And I saw the way my money was literally sustaining lives. No, what's the problem? He says, I got filled with so much arrogance. I got filled with so much pride, such a sense of self. It went to my head. You know, he says to his Rebbe, I don't have to tell you, arrogance is the source of all evil. I can't risk this. How can I do this? How can I be engaged, be involved in an activity, in a form of tzedakah that's making me so proud of myself? He said, I couldn't help it. I looked around, I saw all the people eating my money. I felt like $1,000,000 about myself. I'm afraid the pride is going to get to my head. I'm afraid I'm going to become self-absorbed and self-obsessed. I must shut the whole thing down before I risk losing everything spiritually, my connection to Hashem, when the arrogance and the ego will get to me and destroy me. And his Rebbe says to him, don't you dare. Don't you dare shut down these soup kitchens. Don't you dare withhold food from one other person. Don't you dare take your money away from this investment. Keep doing exactly what you're doing. He says, Rebbe, but I don't want to be arrogant. Rebbe, but I don't want to think about myself all the time. Rebbe, but I don't want to feel so much self-pride. You know what his Rebbe says to him? It's not about you. It's not about you. You feel humble, you feel arrogant. You feel good about yourself, you feel bad about yourself. You feel this, you feel that, you. You open the kitchen to help people, you feel good about yourself. Now you worry about too much pride, you close the kitchen. He said, if you close the kitchen, you'll feel even better about yourself. Look at me. I closed the kitchen in order to avoid being arrogant. For God's sake, his Rebbe says to him, stop being so selfish. It's not about you. This is about the poor people whose lives are being sustained here. Come on. You think you're self-absorbed now? Try closing the kitchens. That's the definition of being self-absorbed. No, his Rebbe says to him, whether you have pride or whether you don't have pride, whether you like what you do, whether you don't like what you do, either way, you got to keep you got to keep helping other people. And you got to remember, this is not about you. If Hashem has put you in a position and given you the tools and the ability to do for other people, then do for other people. You want to work on your ego? Go work on your ego. You want to make sure you're humble? Go and work on yourself to be humble. But don't withhold sustenance from others. That would be more arrogant and selfish than anything else. Avraham and Yitzchak, my dear friends, they're our ancestors. Everything we have, they come from Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. They gave us many gifts. Avraham gave us the gift of kindness. Yitzchak gave us the gift of education. Yaakov gave us the gift of freedom. They gave us tremendous gifts. But more than anything, they gave us our souls. They gave us our Yiddish neshamas. The Yiddish neshama is that ability to remember that we're connected to Hashem no matter what. Is that ability to rise beyond every detail and beyond every challenge and beyond every aspect of our lives, and to see it all for what it truly is, to see ourselves for what we truly are. Hashem is ambassadors in this world for what our lives truly is, which is we were sent here by Hashem to accomplish something, for a mission, to do something here, to make this world a better place. And that's our true essence. And in that sense, we're all the same. Because among us there are Avrahams, and among us there are Yitzchaks, and among us there are Yaakovs. And Jews never have a hard time finding things to disagree on. Jews never have a difficult time, butting heads and disagreeing on anything. But Jews can also create union among themselves, just as Avraham and Yitzchak were shown to the world by Hashem as having one face. How can Jews unite? Truly. How can we get past our differences? How can we connect on that type of level? Well, we can connect if we remember that we all come from the same ancestors, the same Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. How did they get through all of the tribulations and the stuff read the parashas that they had to get through. In the case of Yaakov Avinu, the Torah says he lived for 147 years, 130 of them were miserable. How did he get through 130 difficult years? Because he never once, not for a second, not for an iota of a second, forgot his connection to Hashem. He never once looked at himself and asked himself, do I have the strength? Do I not have the strength? He never once made the mistake of thinking this is about him. It wasn't about him. It never was and it never would be. If Hashem put us here, then Hashem has a plan for us. And that plan is monitored and is supervised by Hashem from the beginning till the end in every aspect of our lives. Despite the differences between us, despite the differences within our own lives from one situation to another, from one day to the next, from one moment to the next. Every moment of our lives can be connected to the same Hashem if we just remember truly our own identity. And I think this more than anything is what the Torah is telling us with these stories. You know, Avraham and Yitzchak, it's like the entire Chumash Bereshis is filled with stories of how things went wrong. Adam and Chava were not supposed to eat from the Eitz Hadas. They did. Yitzchak was supposed to give the brachas to Esav. He gave them to Yaakov. Yaakov was supposed to marry this woman. He married that woman. It's supposed to be like this and not like that. Everything seems to be wrong, right? What's the Torah telling us? The Torah is telling us nothing is wrong. Nothing in Hashem's world is wrong. Everything happens according to plan. If it happened this way, it was supposed to happen this way. If Yaakov was supposed to marry Leah, he ended up marrying Leah. Yaakov was supposed to marry Rachel, he ended up marrying Rachel. Yeah, whatever was, it happened exactly as Hashem intended it. Avraham had his personality, Yitzchak had his, Avraham had his challenges, Yitzchak had his. Everyone goes through their own lives. But as they do so as Jews, as children, as descendants of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who even in the most polar opposite scenarios can always find the common denominator. In the case of Avraham and Yitzchak, no matter what they went through, they were the same, they looked the same, their manifestation was the same, the godliness that shone through them was the same. And you know, my friends, I conclude with this. We keep talking about how Avraham Avinu had an influence on thousands of people, tens of that, maybe millions of people in his generation. What happened to all these people? The people that Avraham influenced to believe in one God. What happened to all of them? You know what the Medrash says? After Avraham died, they all returned to their original idol-worshipping ways. Chazru l'suram. Nothing was left. Of all the work that Avraham did, of the life he spent invested in these people, when he died, their teacher passed, Yitzchak didn't fill the role, they returned to the idol-worshipping ways. You know, the only one that stayed, the only one that remained loyal to Avraham and his teachings, Avraham hoiledes Yitzchak. Avraham produced the Yitzchak. Did Avraham sit there and go, what's the point of all of that? Why influence, why teach so many people when in the end nothing will be left? No. He said this was the purpose, this was Hashem, what Hashem wanted. This is what he did. You know what the Medrash says? These souls that Avraham influenced, that went back to the ways of Avodah Zarah after Avraham died, they were reincarnated, they come back into this world, and they're the converts throughout all of Jewish history. All the people, the individuals throughout all of Jewish history who convert from non-Jews to becoming Jews, these are all initially the souls that Avraham Avinu touched 3,500 years ago. Did Avraham know that at the time? Did Yitzchak know that at the time? Did anybody know that at the time? I don't know. But Hashem had a plan. Hashem said, Avraham, you'll do this. Yitzchak, you'll do that. Yaakov, you will have 12 sons. Some of them, they'll all end up in Egypt. We don't know. We can't see now what it is that is Hashem's purpose down the road. We have no idea. Certain things we see after hundreds of years. Some of them, God knows when. Certain things we won't see till Mashiach comes. But we trust in Hashem. Just as Avraham did. Avraham said, Hashem wanted me to influence these people. He influenced these people. What would come of them? He didn't know. Yitzchak said, Hashem wants me to live a different type of mission. He did his mission. They remained loyal. They never compared. There was no jealousy between them. There was no competition. Each one did what it was that he, to the best of his ability, felt was his divine and godly mission. And this is their mandate to all of us. It is up to us to wake up every day and ask ourselves, just exactly as did Avram and Yitzchak, what does Hashem want from me here, today, now? Not I should have been somewhere else and I could have been somewhere, and I would have and could have. No. Hashem brought me here. Hashem brought me to this place and this time. There's a reason why I'm here. As long as I remember my godly mission and my godly identity as a child of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, I'll know my godly purpose in this world. And with Hashem's help, we'll be successful. Wishing you all a wonderful Shabbos.